Welcome. My name is Opubo Benebo. Operating a landmass as a farm, whether subsistence farm or large-scale industrial farm, sooner or later requires external aid of the soil with the infusion of fertilizers, as each farming cycle drains the soil of the nutrients needed by the plants to grow fruitfully. So, a necessary next step after the preparation of any vacant parcel of land into a farm is the implementation of a mechanism for provisioning fertilizers to the topsoils of the ridges of the farm. In effect, the sourcing of fertilizers must be decided upon and appropriate supply chain mechanism put in place to ensure the fertility of the soil prior to the inception of each farming season. In synopsis, this episode entitled Biofertilizers for Subsistence Farming addresses the considerations of on-site production of compost biofertilizers for the subsistence farms. The higher productivity advantages for opting for biofertilizers, although chemical fertilizers are available in garden store for purchase, and the financial benefits for actually going through the implementation of on-site composting of biofertilizers. Although subsistence farmers have the option of crop rotation to avoid mineral stripping of land, the use of biofertilizers circumvents the need for crop rotation and so enables the farmer to keep planting the same needed crop because the ground always gets restored to normalcy. In fact, the use of biofertilizers keeps the topsoil at a constant, consistent state of fertility, both during the farming and even after the harvesting. The use of biofertilizers also allows year-round farming with appropriate upgrade of the subsistence farm, as will be discussed in some future episode. Agreed. The farmer also has the option of buying small package chemical fertilizers from stores and using the same, but the performance of chemical fertilizers is generally subpar in contrast to that of biofertilizers. While chemical biofertilizers mix through the topsoil as desired, it does not leave the soil gooey as to hold the nutrients in place upon watering for the plants to acquire readily and assimilate. Moreover, biofertilizers also expose the amino acids of the domestic biodiscards waste, which enables the plants to bypass much of the amino acids producing metabolism reactions or anabolic reactions occurring inside the cells. So moving straight on to assimilation metabolic reactions that enables the plant produce proteins, thereby favoring higher productivity relative to the chemical fertilizers. So then, there are good reasons for a subsistence farmer to decide to use biofertilizers for the farming process. Of course, two types of biofertilizers, the compost biofertilizers and the process biofertilizers, are available to the farmer to use, and the adjectival monikers being referential of the two approaches to producing biofertilizers for use in a farm, with the compost biofertilizers being produced by composting and the process biofertilizers being produced with a biochemical process. Because we are talking about subsistence farms, the view will be limited to compost biofertilizers. Yet, it's worth discussing process biofertilizers, if only for awareness, but more for contrasting the two methods and eliciting the rationale of choice. Now then, the process biofertilizers. The production of process biofertilizers, recently determined in a video presentation, uses complex biochemical and chemical processes using as raw materials greenhouse gases and water and select microorganisms. Though available for farmers under the technology licensing program, the cost is anticipated to be beyond the reach of the subsistence farmer, hence the choice to constrain this discussion to composting. So now then, the compost biofertilizers. This method is by far the most accessible to all farmers. The implementation, however, has several issues, for some of which resolutions are proffered here. Generally, compost biofertilizers is produced by the composting of certain types of biotic waste, which entails the exposure of the waste to undergo controlled rotting. The rotting of biotic waste generally entails 4 metabolic reaction stages, also known as anaerobic digestions, with the outcome of the first 2 reactions being composting, while the next 2 reactions cause the actual smelly decomposition of the waste. Composting, therefore, has always aimed at restricting the occurrence of anaerobic digestions to only the first 2 reactions. This is usually achieved by different farmers by different methods, but always involving the occasional turning over of the biotic waste pile, some limited watering of the pile, but never allowing the pile to actually become really soaked and what have you. Alternatively, however, the subsistence farmer may opt for the approach preferred presently for producing compost biofertilizers. Admittedly, the approach co-opts a little more engineering, but is easily implemented nonetheless. The approach effectively takes the art of composting, as summarized above earlier, attended with scientific explanations of the dynamics, and systematizes the method with an low-grade engineering design. Choice of the biotic waste, however, is significant as not to become a nuisance to the neighborhood from producing volatile gases that fouls the surrounding air. In that regard, the biotic waste should be restricted to lawn mowers, cut grasses, kitchen food and plant leftover or waste collectively termed biodiscards. Now, on to producing the compost biofertilizers for the subsistence farms. The components of the design description given presently are easily procured from used process equipment resellers, and they are mainly online for sourcing. The integration can be easily done by the neighborhood plumber for farmers in the developed countries, or neighborhood tinkerer for farmers in the emerging countries, who may actually build the whole design. The design is simple though. A storage tank capped at the top and fitted with an upwelling shredder through the top cap is set upright at a corner. The extending stem of the shredder is connected to a motor. There is on the top cap of the tank at least 2 ports, one to feed the biodiscards and the other to feed water into the tank. There is also a small affixed pipe threaded at the short extension to the pipe. Is connected to a tube that connects to small cylindrical tank at the base and top of which are check valves. So flow inside the tube only goes through the bottom check valve into the cylindrical tank, and the flow through the tank always occurs as an outflow through the top valve. After the top check valve is attached, a gas burner system. At the bottom cap of the storage tank are also similar pipes as at the top cap and 1 port. The compost is extracted from the tank through the bottom port, to which is affixed the outlet pipe fitted with a valve to open and close the outlet. The extended pipe, however, is fitted with a throttle valve, such that should the water poured into the tank reach a certain level and therefore create a pressure differential between the inside hydrostatic pressure and the external atmospheric pressure, then the throttle valve opens up and lets out the air. During operation, the biodiscards are fed into the tank, which technically is actually a poorly designed bioreactor. Some water is poured into the tank as well, and the motor turned on, so the shredder turns, churning and upwelling mixing of the contents. The speed of the shredder is controlled to prevent any pureeing of the contents, so the rotation may be a few times a day and just enough to cause an upwell mixing. Now, the science. Because the tank is closed, the oxygen inside is readily used up by the microorganisms, and hence performing only very brief fermentation before returning to anaerobic digestion as desired. Further, volatile gases produced flows into the small cylindrical tank, which is periodically released into the gas burner system that burns it off, preventing the neighborhood air fouling. Note must be made not to add much water into the tank bioreactor after the first 7 to 10 days, as the first anaerobic reaction is usually complete by then. At the set time, usually about 2 to 4 weeks, the contents which have become compost biofertilizers are withdrawn from the tank bioreactor, preferably into a bucket container. The compost biofertilizer is then distributed over the ridges created during the landmass to farm conversion preparation steps, and the ridges manually churned to mix in the biofertilizers. The farm is then left for another 7 to 14 days before the farming should begin. This wait period allows the microorganisms in the biofertilizers to acclimatize with the new environment, for the topsoil to become appropriately gooey, but sufficiently porous as to hold air and hold the nutrients in place. The conclusion that could be drawn here at this time is that although a more somewhat scientific or engineering approach is suggested for the conduct of composting, the approach leaves the farmer to focus on other issues without having to frequently return to work on producing biofertilizers. Moreover, the farmer is now in a position to produce biofertilizers all year round, the benefits of which would become obvious in future presentations. Admittedly, some expenses are required initially, often called capital expenses, to acquire the composting design, but the availability of biofertilizers at all times certainly empowers a farmer to conduct subsistence farming all year round. In addition, this circumstance also ensures lower cost of access to food with the avoidance of purchases of fertilizers. On that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to these observations about efforts aimed at alleviating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dwellers and emergent countries' small farmers. You are truly appreciated. If you would like to get privileged viewer, reader information, access podcasts of specialized contents, or even vertically integrated concepts, then I implore you to join my supporter club and enjoy that privileged status. Thank you. While still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel and to my supporters club, as to be informed of the publication of every new episode as soon as it is released. Bye. Till next episode.